Hi guys, my name is Fiona, and for those of you who don't know me, I run the Rabbit Room small animal boarding here in Dublin. Started it in 2014 when we couldn't find somebody to look after our own menagerie of animals, and we especially found it hard to find somebody who was experienced with rabbits and their complex little needs. So we've gone from strength to strength since then. We're really busy with the boarding, and we also offer grooming and nail clipping, and we're Ireland's only bunny bonding service. For bunny bonding, you really have to know a lot about rabbits and their body language, so you can preempt what they're going to do before they do it, so they don't have a fight. So that has taught me an awful lot about rabbits and their behaviours. I absolutely love what I do. I really enjoy talking rabbits all day, and I can and I do talk rabbits all day quite often. I spend a lot of time on Facebook adminning in the rabbit groups as well, answering questions from people about rabbit care, and I also get a lot of questions on email and text from our own customers and people who just know that I know a lot about rabbits. A lot of the same questions come up over and over again, so I thought it would be useful to run some masterclasses to help people with their rabbit care issues. So this webinar is dedicated to giving you all the information that you might need to make an informed decision about whether a rabbit is actually right for you or not. It's very tempting to fall for a really cute fluffy bunny in the pet shop, but a lot of people don't realise how much of a commitment rabbits actually need. They are considered to be a starter pet, supposed to be easier than a dog because they don't need walking, but in actual fact they're very complex little creatures. They're very, very smart, and they can get sick very quickly, for example, so you really do need to do some homework before you start to make sure that you're ready and happy to make that commitment. So I'm going to talk to you about what the commitment actually entails, and then I'm going to talk to you about how to go about getting a rabbit if you do decide that you want to go down that route, how to set up properly for them, how many rabbits to get, how to settle them in at home, choosing a vet and a boarding facility, and bunny proofing your home ready for your rabbit. So rabbits are absolutely amazing pets to have. This is not designed at all to put you off having a rabbit, but it is designed to help you to have all the information that you need to hand to make an informed decision. And sometimes after watching this video, people decide not to have a rabbit because they hadn't realised how much commitment or space the rabbit actually required. And if that's the case, then fair enough, then that was a useful way to spend your time by watching this video to get the information all in one place. But they are amazing pets to have. They are super, super smart, and they can be so loving and affectionate. And they're a lot more complex than people think. People think, oh, it's just a rabbit, and then when they actually get the rabbit, they realise how intelligent they are and how smart they are and how much fun they are to have around. And that you can really develop a really, really close bond, a really special bond with your rabbit for the next however many years that you actually have them. They can just enhance your life so much. They're so good for your mental health, and they're a lot of fun to have. So I highly recommend them as a pet, but just want to give you all the information to make an informed decision so that you know what it involves and that you have all the setup in place before you bring your rabbit home to give them and you the best start to your relationship as well. So the first thing you need to consider is your lifestyle and see whether the timing is right for you to have a rabbit. There is obviously a day-to-day time commitment with a rabbit, but there is also other considerations with time. So, for example, is there somebody home a lot of the time, or is your rabbit going to be on their own in the house for much of the day and possibly into the evening with your commute time? Are you busy at the weekend with lots of commitments or kids' sports or activities yourself where you won't be able to give them a whole lot of time? If you don't feel like you have a whole lot of time, it doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't get a rabbit, but you definitely need to consider getting two for company if that's the case. So just consider whether you actually have the time to devote to a rabbit or whether you would resent having them in the end because it would be a commitment that you wouldn't want to have with everything else you have going on in your busy life. The other consideration you want to think about as well is the timing of when you're actually getting your rabbit, because you need to be able to settle them into your house and you need time to bond with them as well. Rabbits can be very skittish when you first get them, and so you need to be able to bond with them so that you can get them used to being handled and picked up and cuddled, because the earlier you do that, the better. And as well as that, a lot of rabbits need neutering around the 4 to 6 month age mark when their hormones kick in, particularly if you have two. And when they go to get neutered, you need to be at home once they come home for a few days just to keep an eye on them, make sure they're not getting up to mischief and they're resting when they should be resting, and make sure that they're eating properly. So do look ahead the next 6 months or so to begin with, just to see what you have going on in your life and whether that's going to be feasible for you. Sometimes waiting 6 months or a year can make a difference to that kind of commitment. So the next thing to consider is their lifespan. A rabbit can live for 8 or 10 years and sometimes a little bit more. So you need to be able to look ahead for that amount of time and see where you are going to be and where your kids are going to be if you're getting the rabbit for the kids within that time. So say, for example, your child is 10 years of age now and you want to get them a rabbit. You obviously have to think about in 10 years' time, where are they going to be? Are they going to be going off to college? Are they likely to have moved away for work? Will they take the rabbit with them, or will you hold on to the rabbit? We get a lot of people coming in here for boarding who the grandparents, so to speak, of the rabbits drop them off for boarding and the rabbit lives with them because their kids grew up and went off, and sometimes they're not that happy that they still have the rabbit, but they've made the commitment to the rabbit, so they hold on to them. But it becomes an inconvenience when they want to be traveling and doing their own thing as well. And if you are, for example, a teenager yourself and you're wanting to get a rabbit, you need to think about where you're going to be as well. If you're living at home at the moment, and when you move out, will you be able to take the rabbit with you? It's quite hard to get rental accommodation at the moment for pets. So you do have to consider that as well, because obviously then you'd have to leave the bunny at home, and are you going to be happy with that situation or not? If that's the case, you might be better off waiting until you actually move out and can find somewhere where you can have pets and then get a bunny at that stage. So the next consideration is how much time a bunny needs. So your basic care of your rabbit is probably 15 to 30 minutes a day, and that is just to feed, water, and then empty a litter tray or clean them out. But that's not all that is entailed with looking after a rabbit. They need far more attention and time than that. They can't be left to sit in their cage or their run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they need lots of free roam time. Even if they live in a run or an enclosure inside your house rather than a cage, they still need time out to exercise, ideally at least 4 hours a day. A lot of rabbits can't be left unsupervised either when they are being free roaming, because they can get up to mischief. They are inclined to dig or scratch or chew things like skirting boards or cables. So unless you have a bunny proof room where you've made sure that there's nothing that they can get into that they shouldn't, you're going to need to be able to supervise that time as well. As well as that, while a lot of rabbits don't like to be picked up, a lot of them do actually like a cuddle. So they'll need the petting and attention and all the cuddles that you can give them as well. You obviously need to filter in basic grooming tasks like nail clipping, which you can do yourself if you learn how to do it. In that case, only takes about 10 minutes, but it needs doing every 4 to 6 weeks. If not, you need to be able to filter in time to take them to the vet or a groomer to have their nails clipped. Some rabbits also need more grooming than others. If your rabbit is, for example, a lion head or a very fluffy variety, they may need brushing every day or at least a couple of times a week, whereas a shorter haired rabbit may not need grooming very often. Most of them need a groom when they're molting, which is twice a year allegedly. But I reckon ours molt for 6 months and then for another 6 months, I think, with a lot of rabbits that live inside the house, the windows being opened or the air conditioning, and then the heating bit on in the winter time can make them molt in the different seasons as well. So obviously that brings with it extra cleanup time as well, extra hoovering and sweeping in your house too. Obviously this needs to be considered as well if you're getting the rabbit for your kids, because ultimately the responsibility lies with you. The kids aren't always going to remember to feed their bunny or clean them out, and they need to be reminded, and sometimes they're not there and they're doing different activities, and at the end of the day it's a living, breathing animal and they need to be taught to have the responsibility for the rabbit, yes, but ultimately the responsibility rests with you. And it is a great thing for kids. I mean, my kids have had bunnies since they were about 3 years of age. I mean, obviously we've always overseen the care and the maintenance of the bunny and the love of the bunny and making sure they got fed and everything, but it is a great thing for them to have a rabbit to care for, because it's good for their mental health, the cuddling, and they have somebody to talk to if they want to, if they're feeling upset. And it's good for teaching them empathy as well for other living beings, and this gets transferred obviously to how they feel about people and how they interact with people as well. So it really is a great thing to do for your kids, but as I say, ultimately the responsibility lies with you, and you have to be happy that you want the responsibility and that you also want the bunny. We do get a lot of people dropping off the rabbits here for boarding, and they say, we got the rabbit for the kids, but I wasn't at all prepared for how much I was going to fall in love with them. So they do have a way of wiggling their way into your hearts. So another thing you need to consider is your setup for your rabbit. It used to be that rabbits were always in hutches down the bottom of the garden, and thankfully things have changed since then, and a lot of people have their rabbits indoors now. Rabbits can live very happily outside, especially if they have another bunny for company. And in a lot of ways, they can be hardier when they live outside, and it can be a bit more natural for them if they have a lot of space. So if you did want to go down the outdoor route, it's recommended that you might think about either a Wendy house or a shed with a run attached, because hutches that you can buy in pet shops and online now these days are rarely suitable for rabbits to have the space that they need. They're usually not big enough, and they're also usually very hard to clean, and they're often flimsy. So you'd be better with something a bit more permanent and with more space for them. The advantage to them being indoors is that they become more part of the family. They're involved in everything that's happening. They can be less shy because there's a lot coming and going beside them, which can be good as well. And they can just be part of the family when they're living inside the house with you. But they do need a lot of space as well. And again, a cage isn't really suitable unless they're going to get out a lot of the time and it's a fair size cage. So what a lot of people do instead is they set up a run for them or a puppy pen inside the house. And rabbits can be litter trained just like cats, which makes life easier for you because you just change the litter tray every day, and generally speaking then once they're litter trained they don't poo and pee everywhere. But this can be hit and miss until they're neutered. It's much more reliable when they're neutered, but some rabbits are better at it than others, so it's no guarantee. But they are smart and they can be litter trained, so it does make your life a little bit easier from that point of view. So the ideal living space for a rabbit is 3 meters by 2 meters and 1 meter high. And this is their living space that they're shut into aside from their free roam space. So this is what you would leave them in when you're not at home. So you need at least 1 meter high because they're likely to jump over it if not, and some rabbits can even scale that. So that needs to be considered. And 3 meters by 2 meters allows them to have plenty of hopping space and to lie down and to binky, which is what they do when they jump in the air and they twist when they're happy. So it gives them plenty of space to do that. That would also be big enough for 2 rabbits as long as they were getting enough free roam time outside of that. But even for 1 rabbit, that's the amount of space you would be looking at. So if you're going to put them indoors, you need to consider where you could set that up, where they would get attention, but also where they will be somewhere where you can access them easily to look after them, and where it would be fun for everybody to be set up inside the house so they can interact a lot with the bunny. Okay, so your basic costs include your setup costs, which is the cost of the rabbit itself, and the cost of their setup, their playpen or their run, their food bowls, litter tray, water bottle or water bowl would be the very basics. And then you need to add in things like huts for them to hide in. You'll want to add in toys and tunnels and things for them to play with. And you also want to consider the floor covering as well. If your rabbit's going to be indoors, you might want to put down a piece of lino to protect a wooden floor, for example, just in case there's any accidents. Then there is your weekly cost of caring for them. So that is their food, their hay, which is 80% of their diet, litter, disinfectants or cleaning products, and bedding. And then your annual cost, you need to take into account your holiday care if you have to pay somebody to look after your bunny while you're on holiday, whether that's a pet sitter or a family friend or a boarding service. And then vet fees. For medical expenses, most rabbits require an annual vaccine. It's a 3-in-1 and it covers myxomatosis, RHD1 and RHD2, but it does depend on the country that you're living in. This is around €80 in Ireland at the moment and includes a little healthcare checkup as well. Then if you want to get your rabbit neutered, which I'll talk to you about later on, you need to take into consideration the cost of that, and that can be quite pricey, especially if you use a rabbit savvy vet, which is always recommended, and especially if your rabbit is female, that tends to be more expensive than a male. So currently in Ireland the cost of that is moving from around €80 for a buck, anything up to about 250 for a doe. And some places a doe is a lot less, it's like 140 or whatever, but there's usually about a 50 or €60 difference between a buck and a doe. And then of course you want to also consider if your rabbit was to get sick, how much it would cost to actually see a vet. On our boarding agreement we have options for people to decide how much they want to pay for vet bills in case we can't get hold of them. What is the maximum that they want to pay, because obviously the vet bills can run up and up and up with tests and everything. And my minimum for that is €100, because for €100 you get to see the vet and have them checked over, and then something like gut stasis, they need a number of different injections and medications to take home. That's when they stop eating and stop pooping. Their gut needs to be moving the entire time, and rabbits can be quite prone to that, and that could easily be €100. So that is my absolute minimum that I have people saying that they will pay, because that's how much it costs. Obviously, if you have to go to an emergency vet in the middle of the night, it's a lot more than that. And obviously, if the problem isn't sorted out, you have to go backwards and forwards to the vet as well. At the moment, there is no rabbit insurance in Ireland like there is for dogs and cats. In the UK, there's several companies that do it, and I'm sure in other countries, but in Ireland at the minute, there is nothing that you can get. So what I recommend you do is you put some money aside every month and just keep it in a bank account so that you have it if your rabbit needs to go to the vet. Okay, and finally on this slide, what else you should consider is how many rabbits to get. So you may have heard that rabbits are best kept in pairs, and that is true. But I do think people need to go in with their eyes open if that's the route they're going to go down, because it's not always straightforward as it seems. So in my opinion, if you have one rabbit, they can do perfectly fine if they are living in the house with the family, and if they got lots of attention. They can become very humanized, and they can become part of the family, and they don't really seem to miss the rabbit company. So there's nothing wrong with people having one rabbit as long as it has lots of time and attention and it lives in the house. It wouldn't be fair if your rabbit was left in the garden all day in a hutch, and it's also not fair if there's nobody in the house all day. If you're out working full time, I wouldn't recommend only getting one. But if there's somebody in the house a good portion of the time and people are in and out, then that's okay. So on the other flip side of it, then it is nice to have two for company, and it does mean you don't worry about them when you're out and about or if you're delayed at work, and you never worry that they're bored or they're lonely because they have a partner in crime to get into mischief with, which also needs to be taken into account, because obviously they can get into mischief together, perhaps more so than just one. So your bully proofing needs to be super, super good. But it's not that straightforward to get two rabbits, because basically when their hormones kick in at around 3 to 4 months of age, or a little bit older sometimes depending on their gender and their size, they can fall out. So people are often sold two rabbits as babies, and because they get on as babies, people think that they will always get on, and unfortunately that's very, very rarely the case. If you get two female rabbits, there is a possibility that they will stay friends and they won't fall out. But throughout their lives, female rabbits, if they're not neutered, do have hormone surges, and that can make them fall out with each other. So it really is best, even if you get two female rabbits, to get them neutered as soon as you possibly can, because they're less likely to fall out then. Once the hormones are gone, there should be very few reasons for them to fall out. Rabbits occasionally do fall out for no apparent reason, or something changes in their environment or their routine. They can take it out on each other and have a little fight, but generally it's not such a big deal, and it's easy enough to get them to be friends again. That's only if there's no hormones involved. If there are hormones involved, and then you have to get them neutered after that because they've fallen out, then you have to rebond them, and there's a whole process to that. It's like a dating process where you have to persuade them to trust each other again. And it takes quite a lot of time. It can take anything from a couple of weeks till several months, and sometimes it doesn't even work at all once they've fallen out, depending on whether you have the right tools in your skill set to do the bonding or support behind you, or can get some guidance on how to go about the bonding and how determined you are and how much time you have to put into it. I do bonding here at the Rabbit Rooms, and a lot of my bonding is rebonds for people whose rabbits have fallen out before they were old enough to get neutered. And I have a really high success rate, about 98% success rate, basically because I'm more stubborn than the rabbits are. I'm more determined that they will be friends than they are that they won't be friends anymore. And I do believe that most pairs of rabbits can be bonded or rebonded with enough time and patience put into it, and enough determination. So even if your rabbits do fall out, it's not the end of the world. It just is going to mean hard work. And this is why I'm saying you need to consider this, because sometimes what happens is they actually fall out before they're actually old enough to be neutered. The hormones kick in, but they're still not old enough to be neutered, and then you have to separate them. And they can also injure each other if they have a fight, which obviously could mean vet bills again, and obviously distress for you and the rabbits. So it's not that straightforward. A lot of people are also sold pairs of boys, and that's madness as far as I'm concerned, because generally speaking, 99.9% of the time they will actually fall out well before they're old enough to be neutered.
they're much more likely to fall out than a pair of girls. And for that reason, I think they shouldn't be sold as pairs unless people are prepared to separate them, neuter them, and then rebond. Female rabbits need to be neutered anyway. I'm just going to mention this as well. Female rabbits do need to be neutered anyway because they have a very high chance of reproductive cancers. Something like 80% of female rabbits by age 3 or 4 actually develop reproductive cancers. And this can be eliminated altogether if they're neutered before they get to that stage. So as young as possible, really kind of 6 months to a year, and will avoid them getting those reproductive cancers. And obviously then it greatly increases their lifespan, because if they get cancers, they are likely to die at 3, 4, 5 years of age, but they can actually live to 8 or 10, all going well, and if they don't get anything else. But that's the big one for females, so you can eradicate that by neutering them. So even if you only get one rabbit and your rabbit is female, then you definitely need to think about getting her neutered and be prepared for that cost. Male rabbits, not so much. They're not prone to reproductive cancers in the same way. It can happen, but it's very, very rare, and you do have to weigh up that against the risk of the anesthetic. There's always a risk with any kind of animal going under anesthetic, and your risk with neutering is severely cut by using a rabbit savvy vet. I'll talk to you about those in a minute. But it does still happen that rabbits do die under anaesthetic. They can have underlying illnesses that the vet isn't aware of, or heart issues, or they can just react badly to the anaesthetic. So you do need to take that into consideration with whether you're going to neuter your rabbit or not. But for females, it's probably a more straightforward decision, because if you don't neuter them, they're very likely to get the reproductive cancers. Whereas with boys, there's not the same risk at all. Some people choose to neuter their male rabbits anyway because they can display hormonal behaviour such as peeing on the walls or mounting your feet or anything that's around. So they can do a lot of circling around your feet because they want to mount all the time. It can just get a bit much. So some people choose to neuter their male rabbits even if they live on their own. Either way, if you're going to get 2 rabbits, you definitely do need to neuter them as soon as possible to avoid them falling out. So the only other combination of getting 2 rabbits as babies is a male and a female pair. And you do quite often hear people buying a brother and sister. Again, madness as far as I'm concerned. The phrase breeding like rabbits is very true, and they can actually get pregnant really young, from about 11 weeks of age. And considering that you usually get your rabbit at about 8 weeks, it's not great because you don't have very long with them together. You would need to separate them at 10 weeks because that way you're avoiding them getting pregnant before you can neuter them. So all you're going to get is a couple of weeks of those rabbits living together, and then you're going to have to separate them until they're both old enough to be neutered. And then you have to wait 8 weeks after the neutering before you start bonding, because that allows the hormones to die down. And then you have to go through the whole bonding process of reintroducing them. It's not really ideal. So if you're definitely going to get 2 as babies, the only real combination I would recommend is 2 females. And even with that, you have to be prepared for the fact that they could still fall out, and you need to get them booked in for neutering as soon as you possibly can. So I always recommend people, as soon as they bring their rabbit home, to ring the vet, see how early they'll neuter them, and then get them booked in. But still, even with that, I get plenty of phone calls from people that the rabbits have fallen out a week or 2 weeks before they're due to be neutered. So your other option, if you want to get more than 1 rabbit, is to get 1 rabbit and get it neutered when it's old enough, and then later on then to get a second rabbit. And if you've neutered your own rabbit and you want to get a second rabbit to bond, the quickest way to do that is to actually adopt a rabbit who's already been neutered. So a lot of the rescues neuter the rabbits before they adopt them out, or quite often you can find rabbits looking for new homes that are neutered as well. And that means you can start bonding straight away once you bring the new rabbit home. Give them a week or 2 to get settled in, of course, and then you can get stuck into the bonding straight away. If you get your own rabbit neutered and then adopt a baby, it's going to take longer because the baby has to grow up to be old enough to be neutered, and then you have to wait 8 weeks for the hormones to die down before you can start bonding them. So that kind of usually puts a space or time of about 6 months between when you actually get your baby rabbit and you can actually start bonding. And in that time, your own rabbit can actually get quite territorial and jealous, because they do know there's another rabbit in the house, even if they're not allowed to see each other, and they can be quite frustrated. It does die down over time as they get used to the other rabbit being in the house, but that can be quite stressful for people as well. So I always recommend people, if they want a second rabbit, I always recommend them to go and adopt one that's already neutered, because then they can get bonded quicker and there's less frustration all round. And of course, if you don't want to go down the route of having to bond at all, you could adopt an already bonded pair from a rescue. I just want to answer a quick question as well that I get asked quite often, which is if you're only getting one rabbit, what's better to get, a male or a female? A lot depends on whether you're prepared to neuter a rabbit or not, because the females really do need neutering because of their risk of reproductive cancers, whereas the males, as I said to you earlier on, don't need to be neutered for that reason. Although obviously if they're displaying the territorial behaviours that you don't want to see, their hormonal behaviours, then you will want to neuter them anyway. I often find that males can be more affectionate and a little bit more kind of chilled than the females. Even after they're all neutered, I would still see a bit of a difference. But it depends very much on the breed of rabbit and the personality of the rabbit. So you can't say black and white, this is the case all the time. So it is a personal preference, but I do think if it's your first rabbit, that a male can be nice because they're more likely to be that way. And if you're not experienced with rabbits, then it can be a good place to start with a rabbit that's placid and chilled. And the females, as I say, can be placid and chilled as well. It just depends on the breed really and their own individual personalities, but I think your chances of having a more placid and chilled rabbit, it increases if you have a male, in my opinion, from our own rabbits and from the boarding. So if you decide that a rabbit is right for you, I'm going to talk to you about the best place to get your bunny, and here are some basic breeds that you can get quite commonly, or you hear people advertising these kind of bunnies. So the first one on the left there is your lion-head rabbit. These come in single and double mane. So a single mane lion-head rabbit has smooth fur all over like a normal rabbit, and then they have a little bit of a mane at the back and some at the back of their neck, and sometimes they have a skirt around their tail as well, kind of a long tufty bit, and they might have a bit of a fringe as well. So they're not really any more care than a normal coated rabbit. Sometimes they can get small mats in their manes or their skirts, and they can sometimes molt a little bit more than a normal short-haired rabbit, but they're not hugely demanding maintenance-wise. On the other hand, in the picture you have your double mane lion-head rabbit, and that is one of the floofy ones. So they're very cute and very floofy, but they do require a lot of care. They require at least once a week grooming, sometimes more depending on their coat texture and how long it is. I have found lately that a lot of lion-head rabbits here in Ireland have actually been mixed with Angora, which is the rabbits that they used for making Angora sweaters from, or wool. And because of that, their coat is more woolly than fluffy, and it really is very prone to tangling. And I've had a lot of these bunnies come in quite a state for grooming, and basically what they need is an all-over shave or scissoring very, very close to the skin, because the mats are so close to their skin. So that does have to be borne in mind, because a lot of people don't have the time or realize that they need grooming at home as often as they do, and then it gets expensive and time consuming for them to have to take them to a groomer. As well as that, it's distressing for the rabbit because their coat is matted and it's knotted, and no doubt that pulls on their skin, so I can't imagine that's very comfortable. So they're really beautiful personality wise, they're very placid usually, and they like a cuddle, but you do have to take into account the amount of care that the coat is going to need and whether you have the time to do that. The second one there is your mini lop, and they tend to be really gentle personality wise. They tend to be very handleable for kids. They like a cuddle, and especially if you got a smaller one, they're good size for kids as well. They can have health issues because their faces are being bred to be quite flat, so like a lot of those flat-faced dog breeds like pugs and that, they can have respiratory and sinus problems because of that, so do bear that in mind as well. Third one in the middle there is your Netherland Dwarf. Again, a very small rabbit, around 1 kilo in weight. Cute, very, very cute, but usually very, very feisty. Don't make good kids' pets, generally speaking, because they're very independent. They know their own mind, and they're not afraid to tell you. So they're sassy, and I love that about them, sassy and feisty, but they don't make a good kid's pet, and they don't necessarily make a good first-time rabbit either, so bear that in mind. The fourth one there is Mini Rex rabbit. They have the velvet coats that they used to make fur coats from, obviously much nicer on a real rabbit. Super soft, it's like a double coat, and it's really short, so it gives this kind of velvety texture. They're just, to me, they're the perfect rabbit. They love a cuddle usually, but they're also very independent and nosy and curious and inquisitive, so they're fun to watch because they're not lazy and they're busy all the time, but they do also like to sit and cuddle. One of my bunnies, Tango, is that colour, and he will sit under my chin for like 2 hours while I watch a movie or something, and he just loves a cuddle, loves it. So I think they're a great breed. There's not a whole lot of them in Ireland, but in other countries they're more plentiful. So the last picture there is giant breeds. There's a lot of these in Ireland at the moment, and people don't always realise how much space they need. They're very placid rabbits, and you can, as I say, litter train a rabbit, and so a lot of people have them sort of like a dog running loose in the house. They're free roam in the house. That's great because their personality is very placid, but because their size, it does make handling them more difficult, which means things like cutting their nails can be difficult. And obviously you can't pick them up and cuddle them in the same way as you would a smaller rabbit. An adult rabbit usually starts at about 6 kilos, and they can go up much higher than that. They're much bigger than a normal rabbit. A standard rabbit is usually 2 to 3 kilos, like an average sized rabbit, like a lionhead or a mini rex.
Obviously, a lot of the rabbits out there are crossbreeds, but you may be able to recognise some of the features or characteristics of these bunnies in your rabbit. Okay, so where to get your rabbit from? There are lots of options out there, but there are some big advantages to adopting from a rescue. The rescue will have got to know the rabbits before they adopt them out. This is particularly true of rescues that use a foster home system, because they live in a home with somebody who is getting to know them and will know what kind of personality they have and what kind of a home they're suited to. So unfortunately, there's usually plenty of rabbits to choose from, but this can be a big advantage over other methods of obtaining a rabbit. You can get a rabbit that is best matched to your home and your circumstances, unlike when you get them from a breeder or you're adopting through a private adoption. Most often, rescue rabbits are also neutered and vaccinated before you get them, which will save you the time and hassle and the money of actually doing that yourself. You can also get a bonded pair, which saves you all the hassle of finding your rabbit or friend. Or, like I said to you earlier on, it's particularly useful if you're going to adopt a second rabbit, because all of that will be done. And then you're ready to get bonding straight away. A good rescue will have vaccinated and neutered the rabbit before you get them, yes, but they'll also have given them a good vet care check before you bring them home also. So if there are any health issues, you're going to be aware of them before you bring them home, and your bunny will have a clean bill of health. A good rescue will also provide you with lots of information and answer all your questions before you even adopt your rabbit. And then once you get them home, they'll provide you with a lot of information and aftercare support as you settle your rabbit in at home as well. Some people are put off by how complicated the adoption process looks, but it's actually a really good thing if they want to ask you in-depth questions and find out a lot of information before they adopt the bunny out to you. It's just to make sure that you're a good match and that the bunny doesn't end up back at their place because they've been placed in the wrong home. So they just want you to be happy and for the bunny to be happy as well. So don't be afraid of answering all their questions and going down that route, because it's just for your sake and the rabbit's sake, to give you a lifelong friendship.
Okay, so setup, I talked to you a little bit about this earlier on, so I just wanted to reiterate what to buy and what not to buy. Okay, so the first thing is your main setup is not to buy a small cage. If you're going to use a cage inside the house, you want at least a 1.2 metre cage, ideally a little bit longer than that.
This 1.2 metres is the absolute minimum that I would consider, and only if your rabbit gets out for a lot of hours of free roam during the day. It's just that it can be hard to get. Cages much bigger, 1.4 or 1.6 would be better, but tends to be as big as you can get, certainly over here in Ireland, and even those are very difficult to get, whereas the 1.2 you can often get. So an ideal setup for a rabbit like that would be the cage with a run attached to it, and perhaps they could have the space in the run as well overnight. If your rabbit is particularly destructive, it might be safer to keep them in the cage overnight, but then they should have free roam time a lot of the day, because it wouldn't be a very big space for them to be in all the time. But for the night time or for short periods, if you have to enclose them for their safety, then this would be sufficient, as long as they're getting lots of free roam time as well.
Don't buy an outdoor hutch unless you can attach a run to it, and ideally if you're going to buy a hutch, you want one that's 6 foot long, and the better option, as I said to you, is a shed or a Wendy house converted with a run attached. So if your rabbit is going to be free roam in the house or is using a puppy pen in the house, you don't need bedding on the floor. I would just put in a litter tray and some blankets so there's somewhere soft to lie down, and then make sure your floor is covered with something like lino. You can use those foam jigsaw pieces, the foam mats that people use for playrooms for kids, but some rabbits are inclined to bite those and chew them, and that obviously wouldn't be very good for their digestive systems. So something like lino is probably better, or stick-on tiles. If you're going to use bedding because your rabbit is in a cage, what we recommend is chopped straw that you can buy usually from farm supply stores. Sawdust isn't very good for their breathing, and it also gets wet very quickly and smells. and it needs changing much more often because it's not at all absorbent. But that's most commonly what is sold in pet shops. But the chopped straw is what we use here, and we've tried everything, trust me, and we love that because it's more absorbent of smells and of moisture, so it needs changing less often. It's also nice and soft for the bunnies to lie on as well. If your rabbit's going to be outdoors in the garden at all, then I would recommend a run with a cover. You have to watch out for things like magpies and seagulls and birds of prey, depending on where you live, and cats and foxes. So it's better to have your run covered. And if you let your rabbit free roam in the garden, you can train them to come back for their dinner, but they don't always want to do as they're told. And sometimes you can be running around the garden trying to catch them, especially if you have a vet appointment. It's not very funny. So a run is better because you can enclose the area that they're in. You know that it's safe. There's nothing that they can eat that they shouldn't be eating. And you can pick them up when you need to, when they're done, and bring them back inside if it rains or if you have somewhere to be or you want to bring them back in. Litter training equipment is important because they can be litter trained. I do a separate class on litter training if you would like to buy that one. You can find that on fionaspetacademy.ie. But basically for litter training, you want as large a litter tray as possible. You want like a cat litter tray. Don't buy one of those corner ones. They're usually smaller than they look online, and the rabbits don't like them because they're smaller. So you want like a rectangle one about the same size as you would use for a cat. You can get them for €1.50 in Deals, or any of the pound shops sell those kind of litter trays as well. I like to use the wood pellets for them because it feels different to the bedding, which makes it easier for them to be potty trained. Some of the other litter that you see around is either very expensive or it's not suitable for rabbits. You have to be particularly careful of cat litter, which is clumping, because if your rabbit decided to eat it, it's going to clump in their digestive system and cause a blockage, and they can die from that. So wood pellets, you can buy them for the stove. The stove wood pellets are perfectly fine, or wood cat pellets are fine. And then bottle or bowl, personal preference. A lot of vets will say that rabbits drink more from a bowl, but I've always used bottles because our bunnies are in hutches and the bowls would only fill up with bedding or they pee in them. So it's more hygienic for us to use bottles, and I've never had a problem with them not drinking enough. It's fine. But if your rabbit is free roam or living in a pen with just no bedding and just flooring, then a bowl can be a good option, but buy something heavy that they can't tip over because they love to flip it. So one of those ceramic dog bowls is ideal. Okay, settling your rabbit in at home. So basically when you bring your rabbit home, you want to put them into their new setup and you want to keep it as quiet as possible for them for a couple of days. It's very tempting to want to pick them up and cuddle them, but you have to remember it's all very strange for them, particularly if it's a baby rabbit that you're bringing home, because they're used to being with their mom, they're used to being with their siblings, and they've had the car ride and everything smells strange. And the important thing is that they keep eating, because it's very serious if a rabbit doesn't eat for several hours at a time, because their digestive tract needs to keep moving, their gut needs to keep moving, and they can go off their food if they're stressed at all. So the best thing to do is get them settled in and try and just keep them quiet. Give them somewhere to hide, like a little hut, or peg a blanket over part of the run so that they can have a quiet sort of dark area to hide in if they want to, and just let them settle in and get used to their new surroundings and make sure that their eating is the most important thing. And then gradually you can start to bond with them by hand feeding them and putting nice treats for them and talking gently to them and then rubbing them, and then you get them used to being picked up after that. I have another video, an easy 3-step method to getting your rabbit used to being picked up, because there is a process to it, but I wouldn't suggest that to begin with. You want to get your rabbit settled in at home for probably a few days before you start working on that with them. But that's the most important thing, is to allow them that time to just adjust, and they will come round and they will become less shy as they get used to the comings and goings, and they'll soon become part of the family. Okay, choosing a vet and a boarding facility. Okay, so I was talking to you earlier on about rabbit savvy vets. A lot of vets don't know a whole lot about rabbits, certainly in Ireland anyway. Rabbits aren't a large part of the curriculum when they're in vet college, and if they want to know more about treating rabbits, they have to do extra courses. It's more focused on dogs and cats, large animals like farm animals. The problem with it is it becomes a bit of a vicious circle because a lot of vets don't see a lot of rabbits, and so it's not really worth their while doing the extra courses. And the reason they don't see a lot of rabbits is because if a vet is rabbit savvy, that they tend to get recommended and people tend to go there more often. So it's kind of a vicious circle. So the first thing to do is try and get a recommendation for a rabbit savvy vet, and any of the Facebook rabbit groups in your local area will tell you where they recommend. And a lot of vets are okay for things like vaccinations. They may even be okay for neutering, particularly for males. But there's the things to watch out for to see whether they are actually up to date and rabbit savvy. One of them is the vaccinations. Go onto your Facebook group and find out what the vaccinations are for the area. And if that's what your vet recommends, that's a good start. Vet who isn't used to rabbits may also tell you that they're not used to rabbits, and they may try and put you off, particularly if you want a female neutered. And if they say that, listen to them, because they know that they're not used to doing it. And then the recommendations is really the best place to go. Some vets are fine for the basic things like that, but if your rabbit has anything complicated wrong with them, what happens is you can end up going to the local vet. They don't really know what's happening and they don't really know what's wrong, and they can send you away and the rabbit still doesn't get better, and then you end up going to a rabbit savvy vet anyway. So it's best really to save your time and effort and money by going direct to a rabbit savvy vet, even if you have to travel a bit for them, because they really are invaluable and they're worth their weight in gold, because they will be able to tell you what's wrong with your rabbit. I mean, our rabbit savvy vet is amazing. She can put a rabbit on the table and she can feel along its sides and say, oh, the left kidney is enlarged and the right one is okay. I mean, how? You know, she's amazing. I wouldn't trust anybody else with my rabbits, and if we've boarders in that, God forbid, would ever need anything, I would take them to her as preference if I can possibly, because I just know that you'll get to the heart of the matter quicker and they're just in the right hands. And then choosing a boarding facility. So if you are going to go on holiday, you need somebody to look after your bunny, and it's important that the person who looks after your bunny knows about bunnies as well, the same as with your vet, because you want somebody who's able to spot the signs of them not being well. Because they're prey animals, they are prone to hiding when they're not feeling well, sometimes until it's too late, and you need to have somebody who knows rabbits to pick up the signs earlier on so that your rabbit can get treatment, particularly of things like gut stasis. I'm sorry for all the munchy noises in the background. I'm bonding today. They're just having a munch. Sometimes boarding facilities board dogs and cats as well, so I wouldn't recommend that, because even if you have dogs and cats at home, they're your dogs and cats that your bunny is used to, and the smell and sound of other animals can be upsetting to them. So it's best to go for a dedicated small animal boarding facility. If they board things like guinea pigs and hamsters and all that, that's fine. They're specialists in what they do, so that would be fine. And again, you're looking for recommendations. Looking for as well a waffle that's talked about on their websites, because sometimes they promise the earth, moon and stars, and you have to be realistic about what can be achieved when somebody is looking after a lot of animals together. So say, for example, some places can accommodate less rabbits and they give them more space, but in a lot of places they accommodate them in cages, and the rabbits do have to be in cages some of the time because they have so many rabbits to look after and they have to keep them safe. Your rabbit safety is first and foremost their priority. So say, for example, here we use cages and the rabbits are in the cages overnight for their safety, because I can't let them obviously free roam, because they'd only fight or get each other pregnant or pass along a kind of illness or whatever. So that's not feasible in a boarding facility because I have more than one rabbit to care for. However, they do get plenty of free roam out. But if somebody says that your rabbit is free roaming out 8 hours a day and they care for 20 rabbits, then you know that's not feasible, because you know, how can that be possible? So just watch for those kind of things, that they're realistic about what they offer. And don't worry if your rabbit is in a different setup at home. A lot of the rabbits that come to us are free roam and they just find being in a cage overnight once they get plenty of free roam time and attention. It's like when you go on holiday and you stay in a smaller apartment or a hotel bedroom, smaller than what you have at home, but it's a holiday home and you're out and about and you're doing fun stuff and you are in a different routine than at home, and it's fine because it's just for a holiday. And it's the same with boarding facilities. Another thing to watch out for with boarding facilities is that the equipment that they use is disinfectable or disposable. So here at the rabbit rooms we use plastic huts and bottles and bowls. We don't use that in wood because it's porous and it's really hard to disinfect. And for things like VHD that can live on surfaces for up to 4 months, that's actually really dangerous because you wouldn't be able to disinfect it efficiently between guests. So it's either got to be disinfectable or disposable if we're using it in a boarding facility. And I think the most important thing as well is that you trust the person that you are leaving your rabbit with, whether that's a pet sitter or a family friend that's coming into your house or a boarding facility, that the person that you're leaving your rabbit with has a good reputation or is somebody that you know and trust with your fur baby. Because at the end of the day, this is your fur baby. You want them looked after and healthy and safe when you pick them up again. And the most important feature in all of that is the person who's looking after them. Even aside the facilities, the person is the most important, because they need to be on the ball, they need to give them the care and the attention that they need, and they need to get the medical care if they require that. And so that's the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. Okay, and lastly, just a little bit about bunny proofing. So yeah, bunnies are very prone to digging and chewing, and they love to eat the spicy hay, as they call it, which is cables and wires. I've heard lots of stories about laptop wires and phone cables and even a washing machine wire that was chewed. And excavation jobs going on at the back of couches that people aren't always aware of, and this kind of thing, and the skirting boards that are chewed. It's in their nature to do it. A rabbit that is stimulated and has plenty of free roam generally is less likely to chew than a rabbit who is bored and in a small cage or doesn't get out very much, or has nothing to do all day. So do bear that in mind. They are smart, and so they do need to be mentally stimulated, so they need lots of toys and entertainment and things to do. But there's lots of things available on the market, and also things that you can make at home to keep them busy, so do make sure that you give them plenty to do. And then with regards bunny proofing, it's a combination really of supervising and making sure that things are safe. So same as you would with a toddler, then you just partition off things that you don't want the bunny to get at, same as you would with your toddler, or anything that's dangerous for them. So, you know, you need to make sure the plants are out their reach, because some plants can be super poisonous for bunnies. You could block off sections of skirting board with pieces of cardboard, or a run just pushed up against the wall. If they're likely to chew that, don't allow them in behind the couch. Block off places like that that they can get into. And the more open space you can give them where they can't get into stuff and under stuff, the better, because they're less likely to do any damage that way. And then supervising, yeah, so making sure that you're keeping an eye on what they're doing and where they're at will reduce down the amount of damage that they might do. And it's just in their nature. They are animals and they are used to digging, and it's just natural behaviours that they're expressing. So the more you can allow them to express their natural behaviours, the better. You can put in things like dig boxes for them, where you create a box that they can dig in, and you can put soil in it, or some of the litter bedding, and you can bury things in it for them to find or play with, like fir cones or bits of branches or treats, and that can keep them very busy and happy. If they can get time outdoors, that does make a difference, but that's not feasible for everybody, so don't break your heart if you don't have an outdoor space for your bunny. But if there is somewhere that they can run about outside, then they do like to express their natural behaviours. But if they get free roam time inside the house, they can also express them, and it's just a case of giving them something that will allow them to express it in a safe way, like the dig boxes, and not get up to mischief. And it's very hard to be cross with them because they are so cute. So just be prepared for one or two casualties. Make sure that the casualties of things that get broken or chewed are not things that are very dangerous to your rabbit. And then beyond that, part of it is just accepting that that's part of owning a pet, that they can do damage to your house, and just trying to minimise the damage that they do as best you can.
So I hope that you found this really useful. If you liked this class, I do lots of other bunny care classes that you might be interested in. For a monthly access fee, you can have access to Fiona'sHappyBunnyClub.com. This is a club that I set up for rabbit lovers around the world. It's an online club, so it doesn't matter where in the world that you are, and it is the only one of its kind. So as well as having access to the whole library of my other classes, I have classes such as litter training, enrichment, foraging and natural remedies, that one I mentioned earlier on, the 3-step process to getting your rabbit used to being picked up, correct diet, and there's tons more in there as well, including one actually which might be of interest to you, which is a whole course called Bunny Ownership with Confidence. It gives you all the basics of what you need to know about caring for your rabbit, all in one course. So if there's just something that you want to know about, you can download a quick class and you can get the information that you need all in one place, and you've access to that for as long as you're a member, and I'm always adding new classes to it. So as well as that, we have an exclusive Facebook group, and you can come in and you can ask questions. I'm in the Facebook group every day of the week, and if you have a question about your rabbit or your rabbit care, something that you're concerned about, you can hop into the group and ask and I will answer you. You can also come in and share cute pictures of your fur baby, because we always love to see those. And we have topics of the week to discuss about different things like how to encourage your rabbit to eat more hay, or what kind of vegetables are safe for your rabbit, different kind of natural remedies that are good for different things, how to put together a first aid kit for your rabbit is another good one as well. We also run fun challenges as well. So one of the ones we did recently was growing your own herbs for your rabbit. So we all grew different herbs to see which herbs our rabbits preferred. We had a competition to see who could grow the biggest herbs. One of the things we're going to do soon is some trick training and agility for our bunnies to stimulate their brains. We also have regular Ask the Expert sessions. So I quite often get a rabbit savvy vet in to talk to us about a topic of rabbit healthcare and to answer our questions, and those have been really great sessions, very informative, and everybody has got so much information out of them. I quite often do a Q&A session as well, so that you can ask me any of your burning bunny care questions, anything that you're wondering about or want a bit more clarity on. And we do other fun stuff, like we did a bake along of bunny treats one day as well. We did that via Zoom and that was a lot of fun. So I would love if you wanted to go over and join us. The club is really set up to help you gain knowledge about correct rabbit care and to give you reassurance that you're doing a good job, because sometimes people are doing a really good job taking care of their rabbits, but they're just not confident about it, and it's nice to hear when you're doing a good job that you are doing a good job. And also to help you to build a closer relationship with your rabbit as well, because if you are taking really good care of your rabbit and you're caring for them correctly, then you are going to feel more confident and your rabbit will feel more secure and will trust you more because you're coming across as being confident as well. So it's designed to give you a better relationship with your fur baby as well. So I hope that you'll come along and join us. We'd love to see you there, and the web address is FionasHappyBunnyClub.com.